Beverly, you are muted. You want to be muted? So I'm not hearing whatever you're saying.
I did. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. So I thought we were waiting for a couple more folks. I think we'll get started. The problem we were having from the get-go here was trying to get my PowerPoint to share with your screen. Since this is a new meeting setup, I'm going to give it one last chance because if not, that would be kind of sad, but we'll go on from there. But I'm just going to make an attempt to share host disabled participant screen sharing. So I guess unless, are you able to reconnect Jean-Francois to share, or do we not? I don't know why it's muting on its own. It's weird. Are we able to share? Or are we not? Okay, we're going to. And of course, we'd have to open it up and see if I can go. Nope, that didn't work. All right. Let me see if I can minimize. If I minimize that, if I open, I'm gonna try one last time. Slideshow from the beginning. Is anyone able to see that? You can't see that. You're not seeing that? Okay. Are you able to see me still?
Yeah.
Okay, because for some reason, I've lost myself. All right, well, I don't know why that didn't work. That's really disappointing. And exit. Jean-Francois, do you know how I could get myself back into this? Because I don't even see myself now. I see Kristen. That's all I see. Hello. And if I get out of that, will it let me? Yeah, I'm not. All right, so this makes it even a little more confusing. I can't even see what I can see. Well, okay, we're going to expedite what we were going to talk about tonight. Maybe at some point we can redo this. Can everybody hear me okay? Is my sound okay? All right. The reason for getting together tonight was that I wanted to share a little bit about the importance of soils and a little bit about my background. I'm the nature program coordinator for Pfeiffer Nature Center, although this program tonight was something that I've created kind of on my own as an advocate for soils. And the information that I got for this program was obtained through a documentary that I watched called Kiss the Ground. And I don't know if anybody has seen that documentary or not. It's hosted by Woody Harrelson, and you can get it through Netflix right now. So definitely write that down, Kiss the Ground. So the reason why I got into this was I was just looking for something to watch and fell into this. And because of our big climate concerns that we're facing right now, I was looking for a way that I could give back and maybe become involved. And I didn't realize, quite honestly, the importance that soils have for a whole bunch of different reasons. And one of the main takeaways I got from that documentary is that healthy soils are very important, not only to grow healthy plants, but also that they're huge carbon sequestrators. So they will pull carbon dioxide out of the air and down into the soil and store it where it needs to be. And so the PowerPoint presentation was going to go through a whole bunch of different concepts of soil health and things like that. But I think it would make more sense to try to keep that PowerPoint all together to do it another time. But one of the big takeaways, again, with the soils is that soil is made up, healthy soil is made up of 5% of organic matter, 25% air, 25% water, and 45% dirt. And so that 5% of organic matter that contains living organisms like insects and worms, as well as the microbes that we can't see, which would be the bacteria, the protozoa, the algae, all of that, and also the mycorrhizal fungi. That 5% is what is key to making soil healthy. And so when I was, watching this documentary, I had this thought of, well, how do I share that with kids to some extent to get them to understand how important healthy soil is. And so my intention tonight was to share about a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation with you, and I was going to follow it up with a couple of things that I had created myself to present to kids to sort of give them a visual of why healthy soil is important. And so I think what I'll do is share that part of the program tonight. And I don't know, because I can't see myself, how much you're able to see of the materials that I've left me to demonstrate. So can we get this so that it's visible? Are folks able to see what I have here? That's still not quite working. Okay. Can you see my soil separator that I have here? Okay, so talking about what's in healthy soil, again, the organic matter, we've got insects. Insects are important because, insects are important because there are beetles that will eat the seeds of weeds and things like that. They will eat the eggs of pest bugs as well as pests themselves. We need to have earthworms because earthworms, their whole purpose in life is to go through the soil. They'll eat the microbes in the soil. They'll defecate the microbes out, and that poop they create is wonderful fertilizer for the soil. And they also will aerate the soil, which allows water to infiltrate better, which is all good for the biome community. Then we have the mycorrhizal fungi. The critical importance of the mycorrhizal fungi is that on the roots of the plants, you have a whole network of these mycorrhizal fungi hyphae. And when you get them all collected together, they form this sort of net-like grouping called mycelium. And so they are critical because when a plant, through photosynthesis, creates its own food, which is liquid carbon sugar, the plant will leach about 20 to 40% of this liquid carbon sugar out through its roots and share it with the mycorrhizal fungi. And this liquid carbon sugar will feed not only the fungi, but also the other microbes that are living in the soil. And in return, the mycorrhizal fungi will share with the plant all of the other critical minerals and elements that are in the soil that it needs, like phosphorus and nitrogen, and iron and boron and all of the other things that plants need to be healthy. So without this component to the soil, then we don't have healthy soil. And so again, the smaller things that we can't see would be like the protozoa, the algae, the bacteria, all of those things. So even though this only makes up about 5% of healthy soil, it's extremely, extremely critical. So that having been said, with my soil separator, I just kind of wanted to talk to kids about the importance of plants. We do, can you see my little flower here? You know, and I'll ask the kids, what does a plant need to grow? And most kids will say, well, they need sunlight, which are represented by these little yellow beads. Yes, absolutely. Plants need sunlight. What else do plants need? They need water, which are represented by these little blue beads. So we put the water in. And then a final thing that sometimes the kids forget is what else comes from the atmosphere that plants need? It's the carbon dioxide. So in goes the carbon dioxide, and through the magical process of photosynthesis, the plant will then give off oxygen for all of us to enjoy, and it will create liquid carbon sugar that it needs for energy. And like I said before, a plant will utilize about 60% of that carbon sugar for itself, but it's going to leach out about 40% of that into its roots, which go out into the rhizosphere, which is the ground surrounding the roots, and share it with all of the microbes. So it's this exchange that's critical that has to happen. So we've got our little plant here, and then we talk about what are the components of soil that make soil healthy and happy. And as we talked about just a little bit ago, we have our insects. So if I were doing this with kids, I'd almost have it be like a cooking show where we've got our ingredients for the soil. Well, we've got the bugs, right, that we need in order to keep the soil healthy. So we pour our bugs in to the mix here. And the next thing that we need for healthy soil are the earthworms. So we've got our little earthworms here. Kids love to play with the earthworms. So we put little earthworms in. Then we talk about the fungi. The very, very fun, friendly fungi, right? So we have all the fungi that need to go in. So we put those in the mix. And then we have the microbes, which again is the algae, the protozoa, the bacteria, all those other things we can't see that are crucial. And we pour those inside. Then our final component is going to be our dirt that we add. So we've got the dirt. It's inert dirt, right? And what is dirt? Dirt is weathered rock, right? We could have clay, we could have silt, we could have sand, but there's no life in dirt. It's pretty lifeless. Okay, so we've got all of that in there. And then we mix all of this up. And that's way cool. Okay, so then what we do is we take our mixture of wonderfulness and we pour it into our soil separator here. So here it goes. A lot of noise. And kids like noise, so that's always fun. And we take it a little bit and we say, okay, well, this is great. This is our happy soil. Our plant is thriving in this environment, okay, with the addition of some water, which we're not going to put in here and get everything wet. And so then we have a conversation about how back in time, before we started creating all kinds of additives to the soil to make soil we thought better, to grow plants faster, you know, we had these cycles that you know, we could maintain, and the soil was healthy. But then we started thinking, well, you know what, we've got some bugs in there and maybe we don't like the bugs. So I think what we should do is add some insecticides. So we had decided over the years that we're going to put some, we'll sprinkle it on, some insecticides onto our soil. So, okay, we added over time too much insecticides, and what did we end up doing? Well, we ended up, if you can see, taking out, can you see that? Taking out a lot of our bugs, okay? Well, that's kind of sad. We just lost a whole bunch of bugs, but we're gonna carry on because, you know, our plants are still growing. But our plants are growing not just the food we want to eat, but maybe there's some weeds out there that we're not real happy to have. So why don't we just take some herbicides, right? And just so you know, the word pesticide is sort of an umbrella word, which includes insecticides, which kill insects, obviously, herbicides, which kill plants, fungicides, which kill fungus, right? So we have all kinds of products that we produce. Well, we're going to take some herbicides right now. We're going to get rid of some of those weeds, okay? Well, we've done that. And in the process, check this down a little bit. Now what have we done? Well, now we're starting to kill off our earthworms, right? And we've also taken out all of the rest of our bugs. So what are we left with now? We got some fungus, we got some worms, but we don't like the fungus, right? Let's get rid of the fungus. So we're going to take our insecticides and we'll sprinkle on our insecticides, shake it around a little bit, make a big mess in Athena's kitchen. And now what have we just done? Well, we've just taken out all of the mycorrhizal fungi and the rest of the worms. Okay, well, that's getting a little sad, but you know what? We'll just put some fertilizers on the soil and we will just artificially pump up the nutrients in the soil and make the plants grow. Well, we can do that. We can add nitrogen, we can add phosphorus into the soil, and those are called inputs. And inputs will make plants grow, but it's deceiving because inputs will, unfortunately, mask degraded soil. And you can only do that for so long. It's not sustainable. But we're going to put on all of our fertilizers, our inputs, our nitrogen and our phosphorus. I'm going to shake that up and move it around. And now what have we just done? We've just killed off all of our microbes. And we are left with nothing but dirt. So how well is our plant going to grow in this dirt? It's not. It's not going to grow well at all. And so are we doomed at this point, you know, sayonara to humanity? No, because obviously, although we tend to repeat mistakes, sometimes we learn from our mistakes and we also come up with good solutions to things. And so one of the really good solutions that's out there right now, which is what Kiss the Ground is all about, is regenerative agriculture. And regenerative agriculture is working with nature to get the healthy balance back in the soil. And so what we want to do is eliminate or greatly reduce the pesticides that go into the soil, greatly reduce the amount of fertilizers that we need, change the practices that we currently use to grow food. So we can stop tilling the soil like we do normally. Tilling is just a way of turning up the soil and to kill the weeds. But what happens is it brings the carbon up to the surface. And once that carbon is exposed to air, it's oxidized and it goes into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And we have lost so much carbon in the soil because of poor agricultural practices that is one of the contributors to soil depletion. Another contributor is pesticides and pollution and also fires and things like that. So there's lots of contributors, but we can definitely change the way that we grow food to make it healthier and more economical, and also to draw down some of this excess carbon that's out in the atmosphere. And so not only do we have to look at climate change and look at how can we reduce the emissions out into the atmosphere, we also need to draw down what's already out there. Historically or traditionally, the planet Earth had about 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But within the past 300 years, because of agricultural practices primarily, and also fossil fuel emissions, we have gone up to 400 parts per million. And scientists are now saying that in order to make life sustainable on planet Earth, we need to draw back down to at least 350 parts per million. So the conversations we need to have to be beyond reducing emissions. We've already got too much carbon in the atmosphere. And soil is a phenomenal way to draw down and store this carbon. And there's room in the soil to store carbon because you know, from when we had very healthy soil to where we are today, we've lost about 70% of our carbon in the soil. And the oceans are the #1 primary carbon sink, but we already know the oceans have too much carbon in them and it's causing ocean acidification. So the soil, however, needs the carbon. It wants the carbon. So we just need to put it back where it belongs. And this can be done through regenerative agriculture. And so I'm going to show you another demonstration, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about regenerative agriculture. But we talked about pesticides, and everybody probably on here right now is familiar with the synthetic insecticide DDT, right? So DDT was largely manufactured in the 40s, and it was used during World War II because the soldiers were having problems with malaria and typhus and things like that, that mosquito-borne diseases. And so they used a lot of DDT and it worked really well. Well, after World War II was over and folks realized how effective this product was, they brought it back to the United States. And that's when the industrial agricultural revolution really started to kick in. And it's been growing ever since. We've just been losing over time those small family farms, right? And it's becoming larger and larger with these unsustainable industrialized agricultural practices. But anyhow, so, you know, DDT, oh, this is really super great. We can kill all of our bugs. But what folks didn't realize, and it took about 20 years and an amazing person whose name is Rachel Carson, to realize that this DDT is a huge problem because not only is it dangerous for humans, it's also dangerous for animals. And in particular, it's dangerous for birds. So it was Rachel Carson that started to have the conversation about the dangers of DDT. It took about 10 years before the scientific community and then the public itself realized, yes, this is a dangerous product. So in 1972, they stopped manufacturing DDT and using it in the United States. It wasn't until 2001 that all other countries in the world, with the exception of India, stopped using DDT as well. And so what they learned from DDT is that this synthetic insecticide would get out into the environment and it would actually live in the soil for decades and decades, and it bioaccumulates, which means the smaller species of animals weren't negatively impacted by it, but the top predators like your bald eagles and your peregrine falcons that feed on live prey that are eating the DDT, they're bioaccumulating this in their systems. And the impact was that the DDT, they think, did not allow the transfer of calcium carbonate from the bird's blood to the eggshell gland. So because the eggshells were lacking so much calcium, the eggshells thinned dramatically. And this caused a problem for the nesting mothers trying to raise their chicks. It was such a problem that the top predators like the bald eagle and the peregrine falcon almost became extinct. But fortunately, it was figured out in time so that we could work to bring all of those animals back. But I have something that I think just demonstrates pretty clearly and effectively how impactful DDT was. So this is my egg smasher. Can everybody see my egg smasher? So my egg smasher, if I lift this little thing here and I put my little egg in there and I set this back down on there, it's going to put some pressure on my egg, okay? So with a live audience, I'm able to say, if I were to take this egg and set it down on the counter and put some weight on it, how many pounds of pressure do you think it would take for this egg to break? And so just hold up your fingers. Do you think it would take 5 pounds, 10 pounds? Just put some things out there so everyone can see. I can only see Connie right now. So put your guesses on there. All right, so I'm going to take my egg. I'm going to remember to put it in this plastic bag. I've already made a mess in Athena's kitchen. I don't need to add any other egg messes to it. I did this program once and forgot to put it in a plastic bag. That was a mistake. And I'm going to take the egg and some people will say, well, if you stand the egg up on its end, it could take more pressure that way. Doesn't really seem to make a difference. So I'm going to take my egg, put it in my egg smasher, and put that on there right there. Okay, so if anybody out there guessed 5 pounds, I can tell you it takes more than 5 pounds to break that egg. And the reason I know that is because the lid of my egg smasher weighs 5 pounds. So with little kids, this is really fun because I tell them, well, I've got a 5-pound bag of sand. So if I put this 5-pound bag of sand on the egg smasher, gently like that, how much weight do we have? We have 10 pounds. Okay, well, 10 pounds didn't do it. So I'm going to put another 5 pounds on there. We're up to 15 pounds. 5 pounds. 20 pounds. 5 pounds. 25. 30. 35. 35. So that egg took 35 pounds to break. So I've had some eggs actually go up to 45 pounds, but it just kind of goes to show you that that's a lot more weight than you would think. Now, the impact is that if it took 35 pounds to break an egg normally, it only took a 2-pound mother bird to crush her eggs. So that just sort of shows you how impactful and how dangerous that chemical DDT was. So there's our egg smasher. Okay. I don't know if you can see me again. Well, and despite the bag, I still managed to make a mess. I'll clean this up later. Don't look at Thea, it's just a little egg, it's no big deal. So anyway, so those were sort of the visual demonstrations I was intending to do with this PowerPoint presentation. And I guess to leave with you is that I think that for those of us that have the ability to do this, to support organic farming and to support regenerative farming is a really wonderful thing that we can each do. We're really fortunate in our area that we've got multiple organic farms. There's Canonical Farms that I'm sure folks are aware of. Sojourn Farms, they're actually meat-based, and they do cows and beef and things like that. And then there's Faulkner's down in Portville, where I'm actually starting to spend some time because this conversation to me, it is really impactful. And, one of the other things that they talked about in this documentary that up until now, I'd only ever heard bad things about was the raising of cattle and beef for food. And, from most environmentalists, I'd always heard that cows are the end of the world. Now, yes, we should all reduce the amount of meat that we eat because it takes a lot of energy to grow food for cows. But if the cows are pastured appropriately, they can actually regenerate and bring back grassland areas rather than to desertify them. Cows can act as bison did for millennia before we took out all the bison. The cows will aerate the soil and the cows will fertilize the soil. And people will say, well, cows produce methane. Yes, they do. But if a cow is out on a pasture land, there are methane eating bacteria in the soil that will break down the methane and actually turn it into carbon that the microbes in the soil can use. So it's these natural cycles that have existed, for millennia that in our attempts to make life easier, I think, and make life better, we just didn't realize the impact of these cycles that we are in changing around. And so I don't view the cow quite as negatively as I did before. And as the movie will say, it's not the cow, it's the how. But if we can go out there and use, the resources we have, our financial resources, to support those that are doing the good work, to encourage more folks to do the good work, I think that's a really, really good thing. So I'm just really super excited about the whole conversation, and I'm very sorry I wasn't able to share it with you in the manner that I had hoped. But maybe at some point I can come back and give you the scoop, or you can watch Kiss the Ground for me and then let me know what you think. So I don't even know how to take questions because, again, I only see Connie, but does anybody have any questions?
I'm just curious whether you're growing things yourself as well, whether you, you get into the soil, and if so, what are you doing?
Oh, Barbara, hold on a second. Where's my, hold on. Yep. Can you see that?
I can.
Yay! Yes, exactly. That is one of the most important things that we can do, is to grow some of our own food, no matter how little of amount it is, no matter what it is. We can talk to our friends and we can say, well, if you don't have a whole lot of space, you don't have a whole lot of time either to support, a community sponsored garden and do it that way, or I'll grow tomatoes if you grow cucumbers and we'll switch. Any little thing makes a huge difference. And so I did this summer try to grow tomatoes and green peppers. And I laughed because I hadn't conditioned the soil appropriately beforehand. We have clay, and I thought, well, a little compost in there, that'll be enough. It wasn't probably getting as much sun as it needed, and it was so wet this summer, and it was sort of at the bottom of the hill, that it got a little waterlogged. So I will continue to do that. And again, that's my reason for spending time with Gail and Jim Faulkner. They're absolutely beautiful people. They're amazing. And I'm having so much fun going out there and picking the little vegetables and things like that. It's really super rewarding. So thank you for that question. Anybody have any other questions? Now I've got all this stuff I want to tell you.
I have a whole lot of baby trees, and I'm wondering, I transplanted a lot of yours and Joe's oak trees up on our land. I'm wondering, is there anything I can do to encourage them? It was an old kind of used up hayfield. So it hadn't been fertilized naturally, and God knows how long before we took it over. And the trees are growing, but they're not like shooting up. And I don't know, should I be doing something else?
Well, I think, if you support the ground surrounding the trees, if you can, put some plants in, like that one of the regenerative practices is to plant multi-species cover crops, and always to have plants on the ground, because exposed dirt is just going to oxidize and become carbon dioxide. So we need to keep our fields covered 100% of the time. And if you're looking to bring back from degraded soils some of the nitrogen and phosphorus and things like that, there are certain cover crops that you can plant. And maybe that will help to grow the microbe community back, and that would help to support the trees. I would think, if you wanted to try something like that, like if it's just in a field that just doesn't have a whole lot going on with it, I would try that. And I don't know exactly, like there's rye, there's wheat. And this is where I'm learning from Jim and Gail, which is to find out, well, this plant is good because it's going to put this nutrient back in the soil, and this plant's good. And that's why you use a whole bunch of different plants. So.
One thing on it is if you have your soil tested, that can give you a cue as to what it is. I did that, and I found that there were some cover crops that worked for mine because of my pH that would have been disastrous if I'd tried something else. So there are a lot of simple, there's pH, there's a bunch of other testing that you can do that I think, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm thinking maybe that would be one way to tell. I know that pointed me to what I needed. Not that I've done it yet, but at least I know what the next step should be.
No, Barbara, that's beautiful. That's exactly correct. Is to find out what's lacking. And as you suggested, planting some cover crops to put that back into it. You're absolutely correct. And I don't know if the Cornell Cooperative Extension, they do soils programs and things like that. I think they're probably a good group to contact. There are, garden clubs in different towns and things like that. So there are master gardeners that I think do soil testing and things like that. I think, to connect with somebody like that, unless someone here, Barbara, unless you know someone that does soil testing.
I'm not sure I do now. There was a guy named Mark Holt who was doing the Cornell Extension a few years ago before they decided to economize and cut his jobs, and he was just amazing. And I haven't found anyone like him yet, but I would just call the Cooperative Extension and see what they've got.
That's a good idea. I just want to share, I think, a lot of us have been watching the news, lately, what's been going on with the climate summits and things like that. So this is this week's issue of Time magazine, and it's obviously featuring climate change and things like that. But I see that there's an advertisement for this organization, and it's called indigoag.com. And I haven't had time to really research it, but what pleased me was I opened their website, and right away they were talking about regenerative agriculture. And this is a word that I don't know if you guys have heard even of regenerative agriculture or not. The movie's a couple years old. It's, Walmart actually put out a commercial that I saw a week ago talking about regenerative agriculture. So I think we're going to hear more and more about it. The United Nations have done studies, and one of the statistics that I remember them saying was that if we were to take the 830 billion acres of grassland that's currently being used for grazing and agricultural purposes, and the 380 billion acres of smaller farmlands that's being used for growing crops, if we were to use regenerative practices on those acreages, we could draw down 50 parts per million of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere within 5 years. So it just is something that's going to take people to do, and this documentary just seemed to present to me some realistic options, and it's not too late. And I don't know where I'm going to go with this whole thing, but I can't even tell you how much getting into these little plants, they're so fun.
Bev, I wasn't able to sign in until you were well on your way. Kiss the Soil is a movie, a documentary we can watch.
Yes, it's called Kiss the Ground.
Oh, Kiss the
And
Ground.
it's narrated by Woody Harrelson. And to be honest with you, I was never a big Woody Harrelson fan because he always did movies that I thought were kind of dark. But after watching this, I didn't realize he was such an environmental advocate. And so that changed my opinion of Woody Harrelson. I love him now. But yeah, it's available through Netflix. And
Good.
after the video, you know, they say you can go to kisstheground.com and learn more about this movement. So I did that. And one of the things they offer is soil advocate training. And so that is where I've gotten, you know, my slides that I was going to share and all of that. All the material really had come from what they had already put together. So it just is a really cool conversation, I think. It's a positive conversation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just I just skimmed the surface of what I wanted to share, again, with the microbes and the soil and the components in the soil. But really, if we restore the soil that we have, we can save the future of the planet Earth. I really believe that to be true. And sometimes, again, this conversation of climate change can be so overwhelming, and you feel like, well, how do you connect with people? We all eat food, right? Even if we don't enjoy being out in nature, even if we don't, you know, get into what's going on with climate change, anything like that. But even if we just want to look at what is going to make us healthier, which I would think everybody would want to be invested in, it only makes sense to support the microbes in the soil, because it's because of them that we have nutritious food, and without them we don't.
This is the first positive thing about the environment I've heard in I don't know how long. It's so inspirational. And I loved all of your audio visuals and the, you know, the sifting through your soil sifters. And I just think that was a wonderful visual way to picture what's happening. So I just really want to thank you. Well,
thank you. This is my first time sharing this. I appreciate you inviting me into your home. I appreciate Athena and Jean-Francois allowing me to pollute theirs a little. Just a small mess here.
You enhance it, not pollute it.
It's a good reminder for me too, having, you know, putting the garden to bed and getting ready to put my garlic in, which I love because it's, you know, you really get squishy in the soil with that. And it's sort of, you know, at the same time when it gets cold, it's like, do I really want to do this garden again? I say this every year, and then I end up doing it. So it's a nice encouragement and a boost, and at a time of the year that some of us can get pretty frustrated.
See, Barbara, you're a pioneer in this movement. Good for you. You need to keep it up and talk to people about how fun it is and how, you know, it's not as difficult as you think. And it's trial and error, right? Some things will work, some things won't.
That's it. Well, to me, what works is planting a number of different varieties, because I just don't want to, you never know which is going to take off in which season. That's one thing. So, you know, that's what keeps me going. I put up hoops so that we can have it all year. And we, you know, sometimes you get surprises. Something you never think will grow. Something you think is a sure thing, the slugs eat it before it has a chance. So it's a good lesson.
Well, and when you see this, you're going to say, you know, I get that, I understand that, I do that already. This, I think, will really resonate with you, because that is another one of the conversations they have with how food is produced right now. These monoculture crops that they put out there, you know, there's only one crop, and they're highly susceptible then to disease into insect infestations, things like that. And that's why they need all of these inputs, you know, to keep the plants growing. But if you do a variety of plants, you know, and they're going to produce their own abilities to fight diseases and pests and things like that. And it just increases the biodiversity. It increases, you know, the pollinators that we need. I mean, this is all interconnected, obviously. You know, and I think, you know, the way we live, you know, our earth is a giant wheel with a whole bunch of spokes to it. So many of our spokes are broken and are breaking, and the wheel's going out of true, and we're really getting, you know, really unsteady. But we can strengthen those spokes back up again. And the cool thing, and then I'll stop, but one of the cool things is, because here I am standing here in Athena and Jean-Francois's beautiful home, telling you that I think this is really important for you to go out and do. Well, you know what? These people who make a living off of raising food for others, they might be a little more skeptical, because I'm not a farmer. Who am I to say? But that's what I love about this documentary, because they talk to farmers who went through the experience and redid how they do things. And, you know, a large problem, I think, and it's explained in the movie, is the government subsidizes farmers that grow monocultures that don't do well. Well, if the government started subsidizing farmers to not use the inputs and to do things more naturally, rather than to support a non-sustainable practice, it would go so differently. And I don't see why we can't get out of what we're doing that's not good and open our minds up in transitioning. But I can't tell farmers that. I'm not a farmer. My life doesn't depend on it. But in the documentary, there are farmers that do. And I was like, oh, and I just think they're so cool.
Yep. Well, there are generations of Mew farmers that are doing it, like Steph and Andy, who live up near me, started Lightwork Farm not too long ago, and they're doing seedlings. And we have John Palacastro up here, who's raising pigs and stuff like that. And I took his manure. I've used his manure, and, you know, we've traded different things like that. My daughter's a farmer. She's not in this area right now, but I have, you know, and I'm so happy she's doing a CSA that feeds 450 families right now. And we're meeting lots and lots more young people who are taking on the organic farming and the responsibility to sustainability. And both around here and elsewhere, I keep seeing new people doing it. So it's happening. I'm not sure if we're going to change the people who are doing the monocultures, but we have new people coming in who are a bit younger, who are starting. So that makes me feel really inspired.
Well, and I think when they start seeing how successful other people are, maybe, you know, and again, and I think it takes the government to some extent to help with that too. But something you just said, another statistic that I just think is so important when you're talking about the manure, it's, you know, there was a 10-year study done, and just by using crop rotation and manure instead of monocultures and fertilizer, the soil would take in 1 ton of carbon per acre per year to do it that way, versus using the synthetic fertilizers and doing monocultures. That soil gave off 1.5 tons of carbon per acre per year. I mean, it's visible, and we need to get the carbon out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, thank you.
You're good. Wonderful.
And thank you to Jean-Francois and Athena. And I am 100% convinced that this technical glitch occurred because it was me being attached to it, because I am a technophobe and a black cloud hangs over my head. I don't like technology. I'll never like technology. And this just gives me all the evidence I need to keep going with my hatred of it.
No,
Well,
what?
the
It's been a
discussion was
pleasure getting
great.
to know you. This has been glorious. It's been great
is
getting
very
to know
good.
you. We wouldn't get to know you if we saw nothing but PowerPoint, and we can watch the movie. I intend to.
Oh, please do, Barbara. Thank you.
Yes.
And
On the other
share,
hand,
share,
I get
share.
to know you. That's been more
Right.
fun.
Great fun. Thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was wonderful.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Bev.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.